Much hello, hello. Welcome to my channel, episode 97. My good friend Abbie Johnson is here, who I met through talking on Twitter. We met through our friend Summer, who is an actual witch out there in the world, and it's been amazing to connect with her and Abbie. And Abbie and I have a similar interest in the Carlos Castaneda material and dreaming attention yeah, so she came at it from a totally different way in which I approached it, but we've had really amazing talks on X on Twitter, and just wanted to bring her on my channel. And so yeah, welcome Abbie. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I like hanging out with you, Perceiver.
Oh, thank you. It's so good. Yeah, I love talking with you, and I'm glad I really appreciate that you've worked on the Castaneda dreaming gates and that you've had success in that area, because a lot of people struggle and give up, and it's inspiring, especially knowing how women are different dreamers than men. I really learned a lot from listening to you talk about your dreaming, and but I'd love to hear how you got into it. I don't think you started with the Castaneda material. Did you came at it from a different angle?
Yeah, I was just always a dreamer, a very vivid dreamer. And I remember I would describe my dreams to friends and they would say, "Oh my gosh, that's so weird. You dream in color." Like I didn't realize people dream like a lot of people dream in black and white. And somebody told me once that people who dream in color are crazy. I was like, "Oh, okay." But we've got a lot of theories on that, like the upgrade in the Matrix. Like when people had black and white TVs, probably more people dreamt in black and white. But
Yeah.
anyway, so
Okay.
yeah, I always enjoyed dreaming and I'm a sleeper, so it kind of worked hand in hand. And I would laugh and just tell people when they'd ask about my hobbies of like taking naps, dreaming. But it evolved from there because I got into
Cool.
reality transurfing. So, which is written
Mhm.
by a Russian mystic who also went to school for quantum physics, and him and his friends really got into the Castaneda material. So it's very, very much based on it. And
Mm.
so as I'm reading his works, and hearing some of the Castaneda stuff, my mom's friend taught me about Carlos Castaneda, and she told me that I should, look into it someday. And I started with what is it, a Yaqui way of life or whatever. I started with that at one point in my
Yeah.
life, and it was really interesting, but I never even finished it. It was just because it's more of his dissertation, right?
The first
I
book,
was,
yeah.
yeah. And so, and that's what she said. She said most people stop after the first book because they just really want to learn how to do drugs.
Yeah.
she she said that was like the big thing in the 60s. But when I saw that he wrote
Mm.
the book, The Art of Dreaming, I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna skip ahead and I'm gonna read this one because I know that this is
Yeah.
this is calling to me. And as I'm reading it, well, actually, I started lucid dreaming because of reality transurfing because they teach that as one of the principles, one of the things that you need to learn how to do, because it teaches you how to
Sure.
control your reality. They don't get into the
Totally.
whole assemblage point and all that, and shifting the assemblage point in the first five books, but eventually they do. But that's the whole point of
Right.
dreaming, right?
Sure. Wow.
So yeah,
Cool. Yeah. So
go ahead.
you did you meet this man who introduced reality transurfing to the world? Did you train with him directly or some?
No, he's in Russia and he's very elusive and he wants to be that way. And I think that's, well, I mean, if you're a sorcerer, you kind of are, right? So,
Right on.
some people have, and I would love to meet him. I think I've met him in the dream world. He has a lot of
Yeah.
guardian guards around him,
Wow.
but
Bet. Cool. Yeah,
otherwise,
yeah,
real
that's
life,
such an
no.
interesting. Right on. Yeah, and then so you skip to the Art of Dreaming. Did you ever go back and read the books in between or go into any of the female books?
Oh, I yeah, I started with the Art of Dreaming, and for a while, that's just where I paused. I read it a few times because he's talking about the different gates of dreaming and the different levels of dreaming, and the applications of it, like what it's for, why you want to lucid dream. And it's about recalling your energy and finding and perfecting your energy body. And I was like, what? This is all very esoteric sounding to my, little Christian brain at the time. And the more he describes the different gates of dreaming, I mean, this book was way ahead of its time. There was no other books on lucid dreaming.
Right.
So I'm sitting there going, okay, now I can do this. I can lucid dream. And he's talking about the different gates of dreaming. And I've done all these things, not in the order he's saying, not even on purpose, but, I've experienced them. But
Mhm.
as you get into the material, Castaneda says that women don't necessarily have to do it linearly. They can do it in
Yeah.
whatever fashion. And it's like, oh, well, that makes sense because
Mm.
I never
Totally.
had
That's
to.
awesome. Wow. Yeah, and so you did go back and read the books prior to
Hmm.
Art of Dreaming? Cool.
Yep. And it was really, what was really cool is, in the first book where when he turns into the crow,
Yeah.
or and he was describing what crows looked like. So I'm listening to this on audio while I'm working, and I had just had this lucid dream where I turned into a crow. And well, at first I had crows land on my arm, and that's when I realized I was dreaming. But
Oh,
I knew I was like excited. I was like, this is my murder. These are my crows. But I'm looking at them, and the babies were silver. And I was like, wow, I didn't know baby crows are silver. So when I wake up the next morning, I'm Googling, I'm like, what do baby crows look like? And they're just black. They don't look silver. But that same day, I'm listening to the first book, and he says, like, he asked Don Juan, he's like, well, when I was a crow, all the other crows look silver. And Castaneda said, or Don Juan says, well, yeah, because you're seeing through the eyes of a crow, they actually are silver. And I was like, what? Oh, my mind was blown. I was like, okay, so I really was a crow, and I was seeing other crows through my crow's eye.
totally. Oh, that's a really incredible dreaming
Yeah.
feat to have happen. It really validates things, in certain states of heightened awareness, you can move into, even while you're awake, in which nighttime seems like daytime and daytime seems like nighttime. And there's just these shifts that occur that make you realize that your assemblage point has moved significantly. Because it can happen so slowly in these altered, like if you're using mushrooms, or if you've learned to do it without mushrooms, it's even more subtle, right? It just starts to develop, your dreaming attention builds. And so I spent a lot of time out in the wilderness and observing, using twilight and different times of day for gazing. And all of a sudden you can find yourself, yeah, seeing the world from a totally different ultimate perception. And Taisha Abelard wrote a book called, I forget what it's called, Stalking the Double, that she didn't get to complete the book. Somebody hacked it and put it out online, and it's her second book. She wrote the Sorcerer's Crossing, A Woman's Journey, but this book she talks about her crow, and Don Juan turned into a crow, and they made love, and then they came back into their human form, and it wasn't like they were lovers or anything. Her teacher, but they just had such a, when you're in those altered states and you are able to turn into other beings, it's not like having sex or something. It's like just engaging in the act of what crows do. You're just doing crow
Just
things.
being a
You are a
crow.
crow, and so you do what.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's, people think, oh, well, that means Don Juan like seduced his apprentice, and it's just not the case. These are people who have pure affection for each other, and they're able to do all kinds of interesting things together without getting attached. And so you being able to do what you did, it's just the beginning, if you want, as far as being able to turn into things not only in dreams but in this dream, and then be able to, and that's how Carlos, given the datura plant, he was kind of put in a position where he was no way he wasn't going to learn all that stuff, because the spirit of the datura plant is female, and she takes men as prisoners, and she puts them to the test to see how weak they are. And so he was given a full discovery of what power plants can do, and the fact that he survived is just a testament to how dense he was. He was a really dense man. He could handle all kinds of things, and be able to sort of like rationalize it, afterwards. And that's what makes his story so interesting. But yeah, it's quite the accomplishment. And when the next day you're getting a validation that most of the world wouldn't even understand what you just heard and how it validated what you discovered. We're kind of, there's not a lot of us that are interested in these things. So
Or
it's
they
a
would just say
really
that's a
awesome thing that's happened.
coincidence. But you're like, it's not a
Right.
coincidence. I saw silver birds. I Googled it. Like, check my history, you know?
Yeah.
It's just,
Oh,
it's wild.
oh, yeah. Amazing. Wow. And so do you find yourself shape shifting in your dreams to other types of beings or animals or parallel beings? Are you having experiences where you're not you?
Um, well, that's what I find about the dream space a lot is that most of the time you're not you. Like if you go
Okay.
look in a mirror, because that's one of the things that reality transurfing teaches you to do, or not even reality transurfing, it's in his book, Tufty the Priestess. She's like, look for a mirror in your dreams. And I've heard like TikTok videos where people say, oh, you should never look in a mirror in your dreams. Well, I'm telling you the opposite. Go find a mirror in your dream. You don't even have to be lucid. I'm just suggesting it to you and you'll do it now. But have the
Cool.
intention to do it. And the first time I did it, I'm looking in the mirror and I watched my face transform 5 times. And finally, like my eyes went to the side of my head and I looked like this weird, like fish thing. It was so bizarre. But,
Oh,
and not every time, sometimes I'm myself, but I've been in dreams where I know I'm me. And I was holding a baby and the baby, we looked in the reflection in the mirror and the baby all of a sudden, she was like dark haired, but in the mirror, she was a little redhead. And then I had short black hair curled like 1940s or 50s. And I was in a black polka dotted dress. So most of the time, you're not yourself in dream. Like you just don't realize it, I think, unless you observe it. You're in somebody else's film roll, is the way my perception of it is that it's a film roll archive. You're watching every past, present, and future that never happened or have happened, but that's infinity, right? It's every possibility
uh,
exists in the dream space. So sometimes you're not even yourself, even though you know who you are someone else. You're in their film role, you're first person in somebody else's life or a variation of their life.
mm,
But no, I had something really cool happen just a couple weeks ago, actually, because everybody keeps asking me about sleep paralysis. Because a lot of people
yeah.
suffer from it, and I've had it happen a couple times, but I've never had the fear affiliated with it. Or some people have like the demon sitting on their chest, pressing their chest, and they can't breathe. And it's just a scary looking figure on them. And
Mm,
I finally figured out what it was. My theory was this, that
mm,
if the goal of lucid dreaming is to find and perfect your energy body, it's not perfect. You have to do so much
mm,
recapitulation and drawing back your energy to perfect it, right? So
mm.
my theory was, well, what if the sleep paralysis demon isn't a demon? What if it's actually your energy body? Because sleep
Oh,
paralysis usually happens when you're getting ready to astral project, they say. So what happened to me the other night was, well, it was about a month ago. I was sleeping and I kept hearing my son come into the room and like jump around and doing jumping jacks and then leave. And I was like, it was probably 12:30 at night. I was like, what the hell are you doing? Well, I realized
mm,
I was dreaming, that he wasn't actually doing it, even though it was realistic as hell. So I was in another level of dreaming there.
mm.
And once I realized it was a dream and not really happening, then all of a sudden my body went stiff and I could feel sleep paralysis set in. And I, my heart starts beating. I'm like, oh shoot, okay, I'm gonna experience this now. And then my body started shaking. And I had, I was kind of scared. I didn't want to get scared because I wanted to test the theory, right? But I didn't want to look and see something scary on top of me. But it started choking me and I felt blue hands go around my throat and I could feel like the compression of my airway. But I just sat there and I said, okay, wait, can I breathe? And so I tried to breathe and I could breathe. So I knew I was okay. Then all of a sudden, I felt my body shake even more and I left my body and I had, they always tell you that you have like like a silver tether to your belly button, but it was on my forehead.
Yeah.
And I was tethered to my body from the silver like umbilical cord from my forehead. And then I was out in my living room. So
Wow.
That's exactly what it is. Sleep paralysis. I think the demon is you, and it's because it looks ugly because you need to freaking do some recapitulation and trauma healing.
Wow. That's so cool. I'm so glad you had that experience, and that would totally make sense what you're saying or what your theory is. Did you look at did have you ever looked at your body laying there? Were you able
Oh,
to?
okay. Not there. I did because then the tether was cut, and it was weird because it went from being silver to like this purpley black color, and it flopped in front of my face. I was like, and then all of a sudden I was back in my body.
Yeah.
But um, I didn't actually look down at my body. Not that I remember, but I have, because one of the gates of dreaming is to find your body, your physical body with your energy body. So a lot of the times when I'm lucid dreaming, all of a sudden I'll be blind. And I think that's also like part of perfecting my energy body is that I need to recapitulate more.
Mm,
And, but what I've noticed through some of them is that if I just say, no, I want to be able to see, then all of a sudden I can see. But
mm,
this one particular night I was lucid and I couldn't see, but
mm.
I knew I wanted to find my body. So that's what I just kept telling myself, go find yourself, go find yourself. So I went into my room and I felt my body laying on the bed. And then I was above my body, grabbing my shoulders so I could feel myself grabbing my shoulders. And I shook my body like this. So I could feel myself going like this and I could feel myself shaking myself.
Yeah.
It was
Mm.
wild. So I couldn't see it though, but I could feel it from both ends.
Very cool. Oh,
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, so many people discover this stuff after years and years of magical passes and recapitulating, but you're kind of doing it backwards. You gained access to the dream world, and now you're recapitulating, and maybe you might move into the movement someday. But it's a testament to that it's not necessary, that you can achieve these states of awareness. Um, Whether it was a gift that was passed on to you from a family line or something. Usually there's somebody that's keeping the spirit world intact for on the ancestral line. And so it's amazing that you have this. And it's there's so many things that Carlos learned to do that Don Juan put him up to these tasks. Like, you have to go hunt somebody, you have to go find somebody else in dreams and hover over them while they're asleep and see how your energy body affects them. And so you can not, and maybe you've done this, but it leads to more and more understanding how to become one with all things and to be able to biolocate. And so Carlos even woke up and he went to bed in LA and woke up in a bathtub in Tucson, Arizona.
That's my
And so
goal.
the yeah, totally. And it's cool that you aren't relying on a shaman in your life to make sure that you're okay, that you've trust your own power, and you're not outsourcing your power to someone and getting caught up in all that can happen there. So I really appreciate that you exist and that you're doing this work, and that it just helps people to feel more comfortable. Like, I'm the same way. People say, don't ever don't ever eat mushrooms and look in a mirror and gaze at yourself. And I'm like, well, I do. And yeah, I see my skeleton and I see my death and I see my impermanence, and it is terrifying. But I've gained the capacity to be inside of terror because there's so much beauty in my life. And we want to become more capable of being in the darkness, being in places that are disturbing, and then transforming that disturbance into joy, because it's really just pressure. And like it's like the program's just trying to make us think that that is dangerous. But in reality, for Toltecs, the darkness is where you go to heal, not the light. Everybody's all about the light and it's all about ascension. Toltecs say, actually, we want to descend into
Go
the
in.
mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go into the body, be
Well,
in the
the
world.
womb, if you think about it like that, that really just does make sense. It's a place to heal and grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Do you find it hard to be, you know, I assume your family isn't doing this work, and your partner and your kids, and do you find it challenging to be able to have access to these things and not have to be able to share it with the people you spend the most time with?
Well, that's the thing is that all my kids except my youngest now, they all lucid dream now. So
Oh,
I've taught them all dreaming.
that's
And so so no, they actually I can talk about most of this with them. I mean, some of it's probably a little woo-woo for them, but at the same
yeah,
time, I mean, that's when so many people want to invalidate Carlos Castaneda, you know, based on his history, but really if you've read all the books, then you know that him hiding his history and lying about it was just him being a freaking awesome stalker.
yeah,
That's the whole goal right there. But like
exactly.
deleting your personal history,
Mm,
it's
so true.
part of power. And so like
Well,
when I read the lucid dreaming book and I could do all the things that were in it, and I realized that this came before Robert Wagner, it came before all the other books, back before lucid dreaming was even acknowledged. Lucid dreaming wasn't even acknowledged as a thing by the scientific community until I think Robert Wagner's book and
yeah,
his research with them.
yeah,
So Carlos was talking about stuff way before that. So when I saw this and I was able to apply it, it validated the rest for me. Even if it's not
yeah.
all, I don't care if some of it is fictionalized. I don't believe it is though. I think a lot of it happened in the second attention. So, it's you can't wrap your mind around it. That doesn't mean it didn't happen.
And it turns out a lot of those stories were not his because there were female apprentices and they figured those books wouldn't sell as well. So a lot of the stories are actually Carol Tiggs, Ty Shabalar, and Florenda Donner Grau's experiences. He just put his name in there, and meeting with Carol Tiggs really changed my understanding of all of it because her presence is so significant. She's so
I bet
abstract and not of this world. And so just being around somebody that's otherworldly, and I did train with very intense Native American shamans who were terrifyingly powerful, and just being in the presence of that old masculine power was incredible as well. So but yeah, we're very affected by the people we're in the presence of, and it's so ridiculous that all these people have tried to discredit Carlos, and they haven't even gone to Carol Tiggs and asked her anything. Like, obviously, they don't care about getting the answers. They just are butthurt that this guy did all this cool shit, and they can't do it themselves, and they just want to prove it wrong because it's so confronting, to our ego to think that these things could even be possible. And so yeah, it's wild that there's people on Twitter and stuff and Facebook that are, oh, it's all CIA and all this and that. And I mean, okay, well, what if the Masons did come in and teach Carlos, and there was no Don Juan, but these other occultists taught him these things? It wouldn't fucking matter. The shit works.
he's
Who
still not,
cares,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's
It
so effective.
works,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
And you can't tell me that it's bad. And I mean, it's the same idea though with Carol Tiggs. Nobody's going to go talk to her because she's a female. The reason why they didn't write it from the female perspective is the same thing as the Bible. They wrote out all the females. Like they do the lineage of Jesus through Joseph's line. Joseph wasn't his father, right? Like this is
How does that
they
work?
women in science. Most scientific discoveries were created by women, but the men take the credit for it because women can't be scientists. They can only be secretaries. So
Or the women that do get roles and positions of power are often men pretending to
yeah,
be women. You
yes,
know, like it's so crazy, and people can't see that because it's just too disturbing to think about. But if you really look at all the name changes and all the surgeries and how advanced that surgery stuff is, like they just slow roll all this technology out to us. And
yeah,
so back in the day, they were doing the craziest transformations, and now they just butcher people on purpose, even though they have much better ways of doing it. But yeah, we're in a world of a lot of really powerful. I mean, this is a world of power,
it
and
is.
sorcerers are in charge because
They
the
are.
energy the energy goes to the people who have the power goes to the people who have the most energy. And if you know how to gain energy, and there's different ways you can gain energy through um murder and stealing people's energies in ritual, that's a means for sorcerers to gain power. But there's another more long way of doing this in which you're gaining power for your afterlife rather than trying to get material possession and power over people here. You're investing in your long-term self. which is that eternal part of you, which will be able to potentially tiptoe past this force that devours our awareness at death and to enter into the infinite, without any sort of, um, what Don Juan says is that if we do make this crossing and merge with, the third attention, that our life would last as long as the earth continues, because it's intimately connected. So I think as more and more people realize that there's alternative ways to die, that we don't have to recycle and like, they don't even believe in reincarnation. They say their parallel lives are all happening simultaneously, which to me is where it's at. Like, I believe we can reach our parallel beings, we can work together with them, and we can come to terms with the multiplicity of what we are, and start to, really slow down and change our relationship with the linear, like the Death Defier did. He lived for thousands of years, eventually turned himself into a female in order to escape captivity from the inorganic beings, and then ultimately used Carlos's energy to free himself from this world. And so the Art of Dreaming, a lot of people read it and they, for one, if you were to read it without reading the other books, it would be not make a lot of sense, except for somebody like yourself who just focused on like the how-to part maybe. But the Art of Dreaming and what they talk about, the Death to Fire, to me is maybe the most significant piece, because if the assemblage point can be moved to a place in which you can revitalize your youth, and if you had a group of people you were working with, students, who could support you as you move into your 800, 900,000 year life cycle, there would be an exchange. And that's what they call the tenant, is that the Death to Fire, he gives gifts to every Nawal who comes in through the lineage in exchange for energy so that he can continue his life. And all these people would say, that's vampiric and dark and demonic, and you can say whatever you want. The old sorcerers did get caught in some really fucked up
Dark
shit.
stuff, yeah.
The new seers saw through that, and they didn't make that error. But the problem is, so many people are religious, and even if they're not religious, that religious overtone still carries
The
into their
doctrine, yeah. The dogmas.
they think of the inorganic beings as things to avoid, but really they seek attention and relationship because they have something to teach us and we have something that they want. And we can learn how to get what we need in this world without being afraid of these beings just because they're so foreign. So
So that's something that happened to me too, is that for I want to say almost a year, and this was just a year or two ago, I would have this voice just randomly ask me several times a day, and it would say, "What is it that you want?" And I'm like, I'm thinking it's my own head asking me this question. So I answer it something different every single time. And then I don't know if it was Tales of Power. I don't think it was that one. I forget. The one where he
the
gets
dream
into stalking is probably my favorite, but he John Juan says, what maybe it is the art of dreaming where he's talking about the dreaming emissary.
talking.
And he says, when they ask you what you want, you need to say, I wish to engage with you. And
Mm,
so like I hear that and I was like, that clicked in my head. I was like, oh, this is the inorganic beings. So I answered it that, but like it still took a while to actually.
yeah.
And when I saw them in my dreams, it was weird. They were like, they looked almost like little penguins. I don't know. I don't even know if that's what it was, but I'm assuming that's what it was because they were kind of guides in my dream.
Mm. Yeah, this is a huge piece to the puzzle here, is that there's a dreaming emissary in the inorganic world that will tell you anything you ask it. It can't lie to you. Um, but its goal is to make sure that at least with men, is to try to get you to stay in their world.
Yeah,
And so for men like Carlos, it worked. He got caught in there. He fell for a trap and they had to breathe new
rescue
life
them.
into,
Yeah,
yeah, pull him out of that world. So in that respect, I understand why people think these are demons, and because that's that old adage that that demons will offer you things, and there are demons, there are beings of other entities. We share this realm with all kinds of strange creatures. And if you can go into the wilderness at night and handle the intensity, you usually kind of have to be alone for it to happen, but there are entities of the night that will present themselves to you. And it just helps you realize we're not alone. And it's usually something like that needs to be in place for you to be able to see them. It's not the nighttime that they only come out at night. They're always there. It's just that we are limited in our perception. And when night comes in, we are able to just see what's really going on, because the essentially the illumination keeps us caught perceptually and not able. But now with my darkroom dreaming, even if there's lights on, I can still see energy now. And the energy comes into the room and it presents itself, and I stay with it. And then it starts to turn into shapes and faces and landscapes. And then I can enter into dreaming consciously through that landscape that I just got to establish in my bedroom, and so it's quite active to be able to do these things all the time.
So I do this thing, you look at, just pattern on a wall or on a tile on the floor and you'll see a face.
Yeah.
Except that what started happening to me is that I'd look at the face and then all of a sudden it would become a face of a person. And then all of a sudden I was seeing the person in real life. And so I don't even know if that's what you're talking about. And I feel like I don't know if that's the not doing of it all, because I'm not really
Yeah.
trying to see anything. And it's just there. And then all of a sudden it's there and there's a person in front of me. It's so bizarre.
Wow. It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I had 50 different faces in my room, all talking at the same time,
You
and I could hear everything everyone was saying. I could keep track
could
of all of
understand
it,
it. Yeah.
you know. Yeah, and it's just like you when you're in these places, like there's just these tracks, and you can be on many many tracks at the same time. And yeah, these beings, so yeah, it could be this is why dreaming attention is so tricky. Is you could become awake in your or conscious in your dreams and just get stuck in staring at the wood of on the outside of your home because it's so psychedelic, right? And you can just burn up all your dreaming attention just tripping out on this like one little thing, when the whole point is to pretend it's a normal dream, pretend that you're in a waking life, and go and accomplish certain tasks in order to reach and move beyond the next gates. But often, and I'm very much one of these people that I don't care. I love the details, and I get caught up inside of the psychedelic parts, or I end up just going out into the highway with my dreaming body and cruising above the vehicles at night, because I'm part of me is attracted to people and the darkness, and so I get pulled. My energy body gets like kind of like a little kid. It just gets too excited and it goes off and it forgets all about maybe what the Toltecs would say are the steps to do. And I don't mind. I trust that, because I really, even when I'm recapitulating, I'll be in a memory and then all of a sudden I just start doing dreaming inside of that memory. And I go up on the roof and see what it looks like up there, because I never went up there. And so it's so fun. Yeah, there's so much to do.
Um, I don't know. That made me think of something and I lost it. I should have a notepad while we do this so I can
All
remember.
good.
But
Yeah.
this is exciting
Well,
for me to get to talk about all this because I get to talk about dreams on different podcasts, but like this is
yeah.
a whole other level to be able to talk to somebody who understands the level,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the background of it because yeah, I'm not a huge student of Castaneda, but I'm a huge fan, and not a fan. I mean, he would totally be my guru if there was one, if he was still around, but luckily I don't necessarily need a guru.
Yeah, I'm really glad I didn't end up going down there. I could have gone and trained with him, but I was turned off by the all the women dressed the same and doing the movements in the way that they did them. It was very masculine, and it didn't feel like I want something I wanted. And it turned out to be really culty. They're all cutting their hair so that the
Yeah,
inorganic feed off their vanity, and sometimes people overdo things, right? And so, um, I don't think Carlos was concerned whether it turned into a cult or not, right? That's the freedom he had, is to just, you know, let it be. And but at the end there, he did tell my elder that, my elder went up to him in LAX and said, it was a few months before he died, and he said, "Man, you have so many apprentices, like more than any man has ever had, I think." And he said, "I don't have any apprentices; I have followers, and I wish I never wrote those books." And it's because he was being fucked with by he couldn't go, he couldn't leave his house. Everybody was fucking with him, digging in his garbage, trying to
I
prove him
know
wrong.
every day that couple was going through his trash every single, they would take his trash every day. But okay, so because I listened to a whole podcast on that, it's kind of trying to disprove him, but all it did to me was prove that he was an ultimate stalker. But they, the couple that was going through his trash, like they mentioned the street that he lived on with all his followers. And it tripped me out too, because my daughter's name is Pandora, and that's the name of the street he lived on. I was like, look at that. See,
Totally.
so all
Yeah.
these little
Yeah.
coincidences.
Yeah, it's all connected, and it was all divine timing. It needed to do that, like pendulums, right? Like a group
Hmm.
gets established, and some drama is going to come in and just do everything that it can to make sure that that group doesn't free itself from the system itself.
Yeah,
And so,
from the
so
rules of the structure of the pendulum that wants to harvest their energy. Um, I just remembered what I wanted to say, and I forgot it again.
yeah. Well, for the listeners, pendulum is a word that comes out of the of what you trained in, the
Reality
reality transurfing,
transurfing. Hmm.
right? And so it's kind of like represents the way in which the flyers run programs, right? If a
That's
group
exactly what
make
it is, right? The flyers.
yeah, so we get to know how these programs run by watching humans. So humanity becoming an anthropologist, observing behavior. A person comes out of victimhood and then is now no longer afraid of the world and stops blaming. They take responsibility and they free themselves from that lower state vibrationally, and they move into a unique capacity to start to create a much more magical reality. Now the program is going to adjust itself and try to convince you that you're above others, because it used to convince you were below. And it's really hard to find people who don't put themselves above or below somebody, right? And so when you can, I spend time with homeless people in different walks of life as a means to just really honor how just yeah, how delicate this all is, and to discover neutrality and indifference, and witness them. Like, when I can see them as energy, it's just so beautiful. Even if they're really, they have a low grade fever, always they're sick, they live on the streets, they're alcoholic, they're gray. But when you kick back and you let your eyes gaze and you see the luminosity, right? They're on the same level as anybody else. They have a luminous cocoon that someday is going to be destroyed, and their life force is going to escape them. And that's the same as any person, that doesn't matter how well off or how, so a king and a beggar have the same chance of getting into the third attention. And it's just, in fact, I would say the beggar probably has a better chance,
Yeah.
because the king is identified as being above. And that's the most dangerous. The pedestals that people have to come down from are painful.
And I like what you're saying though, because that's like a lot of my recapitulation and why I think I have enough dreaming energy is because I learned Reiki. And through that, I had to do a lot of my own trauma healing. But one of the symbols in Reiki is it stands for the Buddha in me, like one of the sigils. The Buddha in me reaches out and sees the Buddha in you. And that's like, you know, the God in you. I see the God in you. I see the God in everyone and
Beautiful.
everything.
Oh,
The
yeah.
divine spark.
And you get to see the richness in their story instead of judging them for being whatever, yelling, abusive, or extreme. Like, people are fascinating, and we need tyrants. I think in the truth communities, all these people are trying to get rid of the tyrants. I don't think it works that way. I think this obstacle course is perfect, and it's designed this way. And I don't think you want to go pick battles with them. I think you should poke fun at them and expose them, but I don't think you want to like get on the same battlefield with them, because the sorcerers that rule this world, they have all kinds of means and methods,
In
to
their
strike.
arsenal. Yeah.
Yeah, so we want to be very like stealthy and not get caught up in any spiritual warfare stuff, because it's a trap. But we're watching it play out. People are going to it's going to become a really, you know good versus bad, Satan versus God, all this stuff's playing out on the world stage, and it's going to and I'm not saying that, my said you don't want to get you don't want to get in this spiritual battle with the light or the dark, because they're both, caught up in this battle with each other,
It's
and
a
it's
pendulum.
age old. Yeah,
It steals your energy. It's one way or the other, good versus bad, red versus blue. It's all a hypnotic rhythm designed to loose your energy
totally.
and take
Yeah,
away your
and you can't,
individuality.
yeah, and you can't blame them. It works perfectly. We've been outmaneuvered in that respect, and the predator has lent us its mind, and so we don't even know that we're slaves unless we
Yeah,
become aware of what's going on with our thoughts.
that's exactly it. It's slavery, and you don't know because you bought into it because you do get some kind of energy back from it, and it's not necessarily a good thing. It's just enough to trigger you and keep you going. So,
Yeah, I know they keep us at a level where we can still feel alive, so that they can still feed off the energy we gain from life. Yeah, and then you go to sleep, and if you're not aware, you're being worked with every night in a way to like sort of gain access to you. Um, and so simulationists agree on this concept that this is a construct, and that these events they're just part of the calendar events. They're not necessarily good or bad. They just exist. And if people
they're
get attached
catalysts.
to outcome, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, when you're attached to, in the books, Carlos talks about his friends who were jaded and bitter by the way life turned out, right? Because they had attachments. It was supposed to go this other way. Like the modern day people, they hate Trump so bad, right? The TDS is so insane that if they cannot accept anything other than his demise, and it's reaching the place of he needs to be destroyed, in order for them to feel. And you can just feel the flyers working in these, whether or the opposite, where people worship Trump, right? Like these just characters come into the world to just kind of show us how how easy it is to just run a soap opera and get everybody involved,
And that's
and
what it is. It's all just theater.
mm. So
There's
someone,
very few things happening on the world stage that I believe is real.
yeah, yeah. No, the psyops are incredible, and they're multifaceted. It's not just physical psyops, they're dreamt. They're well thought out. These are sorcerers that are not doing this on their own. They have non-human beings that are running the intricate nature of these. And so when you go to decode this stuff and get into the numerology and the letters and all the stuff, it all matches too, because
Yeah.
this thing that is conscious isn't just doing it from the limited way in which we perceive things to be done. It's kind of like in the movie The Matrix, when he goes to the computer city, right? And he's observing this thing, right? There's so much simplicity and complexity to unveil there. And but we do have so much more power than we could even imagine. And that was Don Juan's point, was he said, I basically was just tricking you with all that shamanism stuff. I'm just trying to get you to realize that you have all the power at your fingertips. And Carlos did point at objects in his dreams in order to see if they were energy generating items or not. um and he learned to use his intent, and he became on par with Juan Matus toward the end of his life. And according to Carol Tiggs, he was just fucking hilarious. He was a prankster, and he was a magical person, and he could see through people. He would call them out. Someone would be in his audience, he would just expose them, expose their ego in front of everybody, because he knew that they were there for a reason that wasn't harmonious. All these people from all these Hollywood famous people came, like Joni Mitchell, and they wanted special attention, and he, he was not the kind of person that would do that, right? In fact, he would probably do the opposite. If you're seeking attention, he's going to expose your attention seeking. So, and then we need this. We need people that are willing to, uh, like, I mean, I don't want to be somebody going around doing any of that, but I'm glad there's people like him. And I'm glad that somebody that had the capacity to see was able to cut through a lot of the new age bullshit and expose just how weak and fragile. He even went around all over the world to try to find any gurus that were the real deal, right? Once he learned how to see energy, he was like, okay, Don Juan set him the task, go find somebody, right, that is on your level now. And he went around all over the world and paid huge money because he was really wealthy to sit in the presence of these masters, right? And yeah, he was not satisfied. He was completely just, almost, it was a loneliness that
Disgusted.
he
Oh,
discovered in his life. Yeah,
loneliness. Yeah.
because there was nothing. Nobody's nobody understands what we're talking about. They're all caught in some religion. They're all upholding philosophies and spiritual concepts that they haven't validated on any level. And I'm not saying there aren't cool systems out there, like the Sufi. They give up everything in order to know what minimalism and detachment is, and that's a hugely powerful thing you could learn to do. But then they identify with having done that. Their
And
ego
there's a pride in
identifies with
that.
that.
Yes, exactly. It becomes an ego thing.
Yeah. So I think we're just here to live and enjoy. I think Toltecs talk about just enjoying your life immensely, making use of your time in a magical way. And you start to become, what you and I are doing leads to significant capacity to have tr profound healings occur to our energy system, right? So the Toltecs say that you can lose your human form and your energy body will straighten out and everything will change. You'll go through massive transformation energetically, um, which is actually happening to me. Convulsions and very strange experiences that if I didn't know better, I would be going and asking somebody what the fuck's happening. But I
Yeah.
I do understand what's happening to me, so I trust and I allow it to occur. Um, but yeah, this is just that it's so infinite. And what's so cool about it is we're in a time where, because the veil is lifting, more and more people are going to be able to do things of this nature. It's going to become like a necessity, actually, because if we
Yeah.
don't remember this stuff, it's going to be the predator will basically have rendered us completely dysfunctional. And there's so Don Juan said there will come a point where the secret of the assemblage point will have to be revealed to enough people in order for us to not perish. Um, so so thankful that Carlos did write these books and that the women wrote theirs. That people like yourself have had the courage to just see if it's possible and to gain interest in that journey.
Well, and that's
Yeah,
how even the assemblage point. So that was brought. I read the books out of order, but I was not completely unfamiliar with it because of Vadim Zeland in his book Tufty the
yeah,
Priestess, because he teaches you about this area on your back that he calls the plait, like a braid, like it comes off your neck and runs down your back. And he teaches you that when you're using your intention and projecting, your next outcome to raise that plait, like it's a member, like it's just he tells you to raise that area of your back, and you do it from that area of your back, not from your forehead. You don't concentrate from here, because if you're crinkling your forehead, you're not using the right intention. You're using what he calls inner intention. You need to use your outer intention, which is like comes from outside of you. It's your
wow.
heart, really, not your mind. And
Yeah.
when you do that, like, so he's already talking about this area. He's like, it's like basically a phantom limb. It still exists. You just don't have it there anymore. It's like a shark fin, but it lays flat
Mhm.
until you raise it. So he's
Mhm.
basically telling you to raise the area where the assemblage point is. So when I got into the assemblage point of it all, it all clicked. I was like, oh, okay, I already know about this, which when he was interviewed later, he said it's not the same thing as the assemblage point, but it is, it rests on the assemblage point. So it's very much the same
Yeah.
thing, very
Oh,
similar concept.
okay, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, when I teach the movements, I'm often helping people to become more aware of their backside, right? Because we're very frontal, we are armored up here, and there's a lot of openness. Even our left side of our body isn't as utilized as the right side. And so in order, and it's in the books, the Magical Paths book, he talks about the dormant left, and that so a lot of the movements, there's a lot of focus on re-energizing our left side, our artistic, our feminine side, the yin, where the power of the second attention lies. So the backside, where the assemblage point can be felt moving, and it, for those that aren't familiar, the assemblage point is something that can just determine perception. And when it moves, if it moves far enough, you'll find yourself in a totally different perceptual experience than the one that is typically common. And so it moves naturally. It dreams when you're sleeping. It just starts moving even erratically. But if you can learn to control the assemblage point, which is not something you can see necessarily, but you can feel, and maybe eventually you could see your own. But when you learn to trust in its movement, it will align filaments of energy that will allow you to perceive new fields of energy. And from that discovery, you'll realize there's so much more to this world. And so there's pressure on our assemblage points to remain fixed. And if we could save enough sexual energy and dreaming energy, sexual energy and dreaming energy are the same. And so if you learn how to take care of your energy or have the capacity to build a lot of chi, you could apply your focus to learning to move your perception. Your assemblage point would budge loose eventually if you put in enough time and energy, and it'll start to move, and you'll start to understand, oh my God, this is the secret. This is what will return me back to what I really am. It knows how to take us to the most advantageous place of perception. And we used to live in what's called assemblage point used to exist in what's called the place of silent knowledge, and we were telepathic, and we were travelers and journeyers and seers of energy. And then this predator arrived, and it found a way to get us to become unaware of that facet of our being, and we've been reduced to believing that this is the only world that exists. And if we don't reactivate that or come out of that hypnosis, it's just going to get, I mean, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. I'm not concerned one way or another. My point is, though, that we're going to die anyways, and we might as well get curious about what we are and start to really ask yourself what you want to do with your time, because finding a path of heart, especially in the Toltec arts, will just completely give you um, a totally different understanding of purpose. And if we keep trying to make our purpose about our career or our kids or our husband, it's
The
just gonna,
American dream.
yeah, it's such a hustle, right? So the freedom that comes from extracting yourself from religious programming and moving into detached neutrality, indifference, suspending judgment, coming out of fear of people that have power, and being willing to gain power. A lot of people tell me, I don't want anything to do with power. Well, how are you? I mean, what do you mean you don't want anything to do with power? That's all there is. This whole thing is
It's how
power,
you get
right?
out of
And if
bed every
you,
day.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, you and I and people that are reclaiming our attention and are not letting the theater of the world kind of usher us along, we're just going to build a muscle. I mean, you're already, we're both doing that, but there's a muscle that builds within you. It's like an energy muscle and a capacity to focus more and more. the recapitulation leads to a very, very unique state of silence in which you can enter into your memories and actually return to them, which is time travel. And so we're going to eventually let the darkness swallow us whole and take us into the other side of the vision, and we'll pop into some other place, and we'll be able to, you know, have all kinds of adventures. And so it's not just what Abbie's doing at night in her dreams, but what I do during the daytime is I move into these really unique states of perception while I'm awake, and I practice the art of gazing, and I get to see the most beautiful things, in places that wouldn't seem to be necessarily all that beautiful. But when you can see energy directly and understand that this whole place is energy and that your energy and the physicality is an illusion, everything gets soft and magical and interesting. You start to know martial arts without even training in it. It's like your body understands the command that it takes to run and direct your energy in the way that would be successful. Like Carlos in the books, he wasn't striking people. He would see a hole in their field, and he just put his foot in a divot, and the woman would go flying across the room because all those women are trying to kill him and take his power. And he just, they were all set up because Don Juan knew Carlos was going to be able to do all this stuff. It's just Carlos didn't know it. So Don Juan was a master trickster. He put all of his apprentices in impossible situations in order for them to discover what they were capable of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that man. He's very
Yeah, and
conniving.
totally. Yeah, and very empty. He'd become nothing. He'd become what he calls a collection of stories. And when you recapitulate your life, not only do it doesn't end there. You can recapitulate your teacher's life and his teacher's life and go all the way down the lineage. And so Carlos went to what's called the coil of intent. There's a coil of intent that the shamans of ancient Mexico created, and it's electrical. And Carlos did say there would be an electrical warrior that would come someday, as we got close to the end. Um, and that there's much that can still play out within this lineage, even though the lineage has been closed. Carlos's job was then to disseminate the knowledge. And if he hadn't written those books and offered those teachings and started taking on apprentices, everything would be very different. But um, people like you and I get to take this knowledge and run with it. And what's sad is a lot of the shamanic people in the dream world believe that the media is just completely on the up and up, right? They're just totally like can't believe
They
that
get
that
wrapped up in
people,
the theater. Yeah.
yeah. So they're really gifted and really interesting folks, and they're very kind of abstract. But then you try to get them to go into any area outside of their comfort zone, and you see their ego for what it is. They're very threatened, and they're very disturbed that anyone would even so it's just they're just so offended, and the whole point of the Toltec stuff is to stop being offended, to not be offended by anything. So it's crazy to watch, and it's lonely and kind of terrifying to me to watch my teachers just go that direction. um but it really makes me appreciate people like yourself and others who I'm meeting who are willing to look at all of it and not just focus on the energetics, but also be able to see the theater and see through it and understand how it operates, because it's sorcery itself,
It
right? And so
is.
for sorcerers not to want to learn about this kind of sorcery suggests to me they're not really in it. They're not here to learn. Don
No,
Juan
because
said,
again, if you're only looking at one side or the other, like the light, this is the light, you're this is not a realm of one or the other. It is a realm of duality, and you have to merge the two, right? The two pillars.
yeah, and you need to know both sides of yourself. A
Yeah,
lot of people
exactly. That's
and women,
coming inside.
yeah, yeah, and getting to know your desire, your sexual power, what does it for you. Like a lot of people are trying to like sugarcoat things, and they say like Carlos shouldn't have been chasing women. I'm like, why not? What are you talking about, dude? Like when you have your energy body, you don't you don't need to be celibate anymore. Like he achieved what he needed by being, by taking care of himself. And now one of the most powerful dudes to walk the earth, he should be getting laid properly. Like what's wrong with that? You know what
Absolutely.
I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there's this
Because it's
projection
not
that people,
spiritual, because,
yeah,
Virgin Mary and all.
yeah. No, it's so ridiculous. But there are cool teachings around the virgin and the whore and how to be in both and how to enjoy both, for women and for men to get to know themselves. The only way to know yourself is to put yourself in situations in which are new to you. And so we isolate ourselves in spiritual concepts and we limit getting to know where our power really lies and what we, because ultimately the desire leads to wanting to be impeccable with your energy and to learn how to travel in other worlds. But that's not going to be necessarily the first thing that comes up when you finally admit to yourself what you want to be doing. You're going to go through stages of coming out of repressed energy and into expression. A lot of people avoid their anger, but your anger is key. Like if you can get to any areas in your life where you didn't say no when you wanted to, there's a lot of juice there for you to work out, and you can
Yeah.
have massive healings occur.
Any memory that you have where you have any feeling or sensation in your body, whether it's humiliation, embarrassment, even joy, that's a little bit like you should look back at almost every memory and feel a neutral when you talk about it.
Mm.
I mean, you can laugh about it or whatever, but it shouldn't be painful. And if you experience pain in your body, then that's like you're
Yeah.
clogging your chakra system, you're causing issues in your energy body. So,
Yes. Yeah.
and
That's
disease in your physical body.
yeah.
Dis-ease causes disease.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
that's what
And
I find is so fascinating too, is that so reading about the recapitulation and then actually, watching people do it, because I was doing it the way that I read it and everything, but then I watched a video of this woman who's done it, the whole 6 months, year thing. And she was doing it with her eyes open. You turn your head from side to side and then, breathe in and then breathe out in the middle while you're thinking about different people in your life. Well, I realized he pretty much was the inventor of EMDR therapy,
yeah.
because EMDR, is what I don't know what it stands for. Eye movement something, but
Yeah.
you basically I've had sessions with it where you either tap your shoulders or you move your eyes from side to side while you're like discussing something or and then breathing. And for some
Totally.
reason, moving your eyes side to side helps you release the energy that's stored in your body that's affiliated with these memories. So, like, I don't know when EMDR therapy came out, but I don't think it was very long ago. And I'm going to say that Carlos Castaneda is the one who wrote the book on it before it was called EMDR. So not only did
Totally.
he write the book on lucid dreaming, he created EMDR therapy.
For sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. So such a significant gift, that Don Juan gave us by teaching this man, and he picked the right man. It needed to come through that channel, through a university person. It
Through an
needed to come through.
academic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's perfect. And yeah, so for me too, like any memories where you cringe and you're like, I can't believe I fucking said that. I can't
Yeah.
believe I did that.
And
If you
it
can
could be
go
like
back,
third grade, and you're like, why am I even thinking about this? Stop thinking about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's
But
something you
being with
gotta
the field,
recall your energy from.
yeah, just by being neutral, like you said, just by allowing it to wash over you without cringing again. If you keep cringing every time you review the cringe, you're gonna have to learn to let it move through you and be okay with what you did. That will allow you then to go and do the thing differently than you used to do it, right? Like if you're intimidated by a beautiful woman and you can't talk to her, and you try to review that memory and you're cringing and you can sit with the cringe, then next time that happens, you will find that you're way more capable of expressing yourself or saying what you wanted to say because you dealt with the pattern, the blueprint. You
Yeah.
changed it. Uh, very effective. And so it doesn't have to be the recapitulation in the way that Taisha Abelard wrote
Mhm.
about it, where you start with the last moment that happened and go all the way back to the womb. You can pick key points in your life where a lot of energy is stored, sexual history. For me, it's like cults,
That
being with
and that is
shamans.
important. I think sexual history, anybody you share DNA with, even if you felt like it was meaningless, it meant something, and you have energy to recall there and to give
Of
back.
course. Yeah, yeah, there's a 7-year bond that occurs because we're designed to, procreate, and this is a way in which the family unit might be able to stay together, is that 7-year bond that energetically occurs. But there is a way to very, you know, fiercely reclaim your power from those experiences, and absolutely make sure that you get out and purge anything that isn't yours, and make sure it goes back to where it came from. And that's how it won't, but if you just try to give it to a candle or something, it's not as effective as returning it to the scene in which you establish it. It's like magnets. It'll go back home to where it came from, and your energy will magnetically return to you once you learn how to open your gap properly and really understand what's occurring during the shamanic art of recapitulating. It's a very, very powerful thing. And it's so simple. You don't need a teacher. You don't need a drug. You don't need anybody to hold your hand. You don't need a clothes or a home or shelter. You don't need anything. Right. And when the universe knows that you're recapitulating, it's going to send you this supportive energy that's associated with the Toltec lineage. You're going to feel the support of these powerful beings, which is the coil of intent of the shamans of ancient Mexico. We don't have to, we're not alone. We're working with all these energies. And when you're discerning, you know which lineages to work with and which ones not to. Like in Twitter and stuff, I could have hooked up with all these popular dudes and rose to fame, and it's like all these energies are so tricky to even talk to these people. Like they're so materialistic, and there's so much just like stuff going on. And so listening is the difference. Impeccability is not discipline. Impeccability is listening. Discipline is like rules. It's kind of fear based.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm disciplined so that I don't have to feel these other things. Where impeccability is more like really honoring everything that's moving, really honoring your inner child, your rebel teen, all the parts of you, and getting them to talk to each other, and then working it all out.
And one misconception I really had about impeccability was that I always felt like at first that he's talking about being without sin. And that's not what that means either. It has nothing to do with that. But it's really just kind of seeing things through, like seeing through your intention and like pull it off, do it, like make it happen. Like it's it's being unbending in your intent, I think.
Yep. Yeah, and by getting like Carlos was caught up in morals and dogmas and religion,
Hmm.
and those morals stem from the idea of sin, right?
Yeah.
We're just like programs within programs, and so even morals get in the way. People have a hard time with that. But if you're operating and you're a people pleaser and you're handing your power over or following suit along with the programming, you know, um, then you're being used. And we want to stop being used, and we want to use the world instead of it using us, because that's just the way this place functions. You don't get
It's
clear
one or
on
the
how.
other.
Yeah, you can stalk the stalkers, right? Like the inorganic beings that we've been talking about here, they have spun this reality into fixation, right? So this is just one of many layers of the onion. And that's called the first ring of power, is to spin the world into only a limited place. But the second ring of power is to move beyond this place and to experience the infinite, many other layers and other realms and other worlds. And there are entire other worlds as real and as functional as this one. They have cars and gas stations and buildings and structures and all kinds of stuff. And they're bipedal humanoids and they don't look like us. They're more like Carlos would go to these other worlds and he's like, are we in Lithuania? Are we, where are we? You know, and start looking at these people and Donald's like, don't fucking, you know, you're gonna get noticed if you don't learn how to just be here. And pretty soon they're all just moving towards him and he had to leave the dream because he didn't have he could never listen to his teacher for one. He was too excited, you know. So but yeah, there's other worlds to go to and that's, you know, but the cool thing what Carlos said as well is after all these worlds that he went to, just being present in this dream was the ultimate experience, right? Because he reached silence and he was just really in a state of divine connection, and being able to see energy as it flows is like a beautiful thing to be able to do. It's starting to happen to me. I'm starting to see energy more and more, and that you do stop relating to people. You know, you stop sort of, I don't know, it's like you kind of feel you lose interest in the things most people are interested in, and you start going inward more and more. And it does take a little creativity to be, you know, kind of coming out of the illusion but still participate in it. You got to
Yeah,
really know your energy levels and how
you
to
have to stalk
create.
yourself then.
Exactly. Yeah, so kudos to you for raising kids, running a job. You're you still training, you're
Yep,
into bodybuilding still. Awesome. It's a lot.
yep. It is a lot. And but I don't know. I feel like you got to do something for your mind. You got to do something for your body and your soul, you
Totally.
know? So I like lifting heavy stuff. So that's just
Yeah.
my cup of tea there.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Um, yeah, I'm doing carnivore and I'm letting my body switch over into a totally different way of life, and
Fuel.
it's
Yeah.
healing all these injuries that I had. Um, it's really intense. Your body does all these like strange cramps and spasms and stuff as it's fixing itself. So I'm excited to then kind of have the proper fuel and explore the physical more, because I've been more in the I'm like a partier, raves and concerts and dancing and women, and you know, like I haven't been so focused on cultivating my own self, and I'm really looking forward to yeah what this new energy is offering. And as I'm going more inward, I'm called to more a different level of self-care. um so yeah, martial arts is, I used to be able to train really hard in Oregon with a cool teacher, and after COVID, everybody's fucking retarded. They all fucking put on masks and they all got jabbed. And it's just like really powerful people that were just bright, shining bright and beautiful. They're sick all the time now and they lost that juice. It's so just, it's a lot to mourn. I did, even though I'm glad for everything, um, a lot a lot of cool things did go away in my life, and so I'm like trying to find a way to reestablish them. And sometimes I might have to do my own dojo, right? Because nobody's doing what I want. And so we just have to follow our passion and let it lead to what, you know, you never know what or why you're called to certain things. And so it's cool that you found a path to you know, really see what's possible. And that's really where it's at, is moving beyond limitation, and bodybuilding is very much forces you to face things within yourself that are keeping you from discovering what's possible.
Well,
It's
that's
awesome.
this whole spiritual path for me, between reality transurfing and the Castaneda stuff has taught me that there's nothing that's not possible. It's a shift of my assemblage point. So, I can have the body that I always wanted. And that to me, just knowing that if it is all up here, then why can't I do it? I should do it. I should try to do it. So, naturally that's what I did. And I mean, I just started with a visualization of what I wanted it to be like. I imagined my next mannequin. It was going to be hard,
Yeah,
smooth, like
yeah,
curvy, and it was going to look great. And
awesome.
I just pictured it until I knew that was my next reality. And then I stepped into it. It's just all of a sudden I met a coach. And then from there, I got a better coach and then met the people to teach me posing and, little things. But it all fell into place like it should, just off of my intention alone. And yeah, I mean, I'm
Beautiful.
doing the hard work too, but I'm just saying, like,
Right. It
I
started with a
transformed
dream.
my life. I transformed my body. I look better now than I did in my 20s, and I'm 44 years
Oh,
old. So
congratulations. That's so
thank
cool.
you.
Yeah, it's yeah, we in the Toltec way, you say you want to dream your reality into being, create the foundation that's going to make it possible for you to be conscious as lucid as possible. So a lot of people try to avoid their careers and try to move away from money and figure out a way to be spiritual, and it's just chaos, right? They don't have the structure, they don't have the foundation, that they're desperately in a state of not knowing, of the unknown. And so we want to create some known. We want to use like bodybuilding or something, a system, and discover how capable we are of having a vision and then bringing it forward into our reality. So that's willpower, which is different than will. Toltecs talk about will, right? Which is opening your gap, and there's these luminous fibers that reach out and feel the world. Sorcerers learn to use those fibers to not only feel the world, but to perform maneuvers, in the wilderness or in the desert or in places that aren't physically possible, but they are energetically possible. It's not being done with your physicality. The physicality is an illusion. Those luminous fibers are more real than this body. But by you building your body as a dreamer, you're strengthening not just your physical body, you're strengthening your luminous fibers. You'll be able to utilize, as a woman, the power of your womb in a way that is that much more dynamic. And so reading the books about the women, reading about Lagorda, who had many children, but after the recapitulation, her yoni was a virgin's. She had fixed her body, not just physically but energetically. She said, no man has ever entered me because I'm no longer that woman, right? And
I
so
love that.
we even, and she was at one point an extremely obese, energetically drained, you know, um, person who had many children. And every child we have creates a hole in our luminosity. So unless you know how to patch those holes become bigger and bigger. And then a person can just be basically like people that have a lot of children and don't know how to energetically take care of themselves, don't realize that they depleted themselves significantly. The fact that she was able to go from that person to one of the most peerless, powerful warriors that have walked this earth is significant, right? So, speaking of impossible or possible, um, it is though sometimes that somebody's life needs to be that bad that they'd be willing to do whatever it takes to change it. And they say
Yeah.
it's easier to be impeccable in situations that are difficult than be impeccable in a day-to-day non-threatening situation. But yeah, women, as the world changes, we're going to see and understand how unique of a difference a woman is from a man, and that women have an advantage energetically when it comes to dreaming, long distance healing in general, intuition, the capacity to see and know what a child needs, the mother bear. All of these things are necessary developments that need to be activated, I think, because of the time we're in. And I think it's going to be really amazing as more and more women come out of fear, all this knowledge that we've been told about viruses, and all these fear programs are starting to fade and not be as effective on people. So there's a lot of empowerment.
It really is. So many more people are waking up to the ridiculousness of it, and it does make me happy. I realize that puts them in a pretty fragile state because when you're first waking up to it, it's like, oh, but eventually you get to a
Mm,
place where you realize it was never about that anyway.
yeah. Yeah, it's
It was
so
all
confronting at
distraction.
first, but it's really liberating. the other side of it, you know. And when you no longer care or are concerned how other people perceive you, then you can start saying what you really feel and want without being afraid of being ridiculed. And the more people that do that, the more comfortable everyone else will be with asking questions and not feeling embarrassed to not know. To me, this place is a mystery. I don't claim to understand how it
Yeah.
functions. I like truthers though, because they're willing to ask the hard questions and kind of go into the heavy, the black pill stuff is important to spend some time in to understand how sorcery functions. But on the other side of that is that, you know, facing these energies and being able to withstand as they look back at you develops your capacity to become indifferent and be able to observe things, you know, kind of behind the screen. Like there's you can sense people's intention. You start to deal with energetic challenges in your dreams. I battled a man in my dreams every night for years because I had left his apprenticeship, and whether it was him or an inorganic using him to try to get me all spun out, I becoming a very powerful dreamer, capable of uh, being aware in my dreams because of how uncomfortably intense it was. And so I'm really thankful for all of that. And I kind of think people need more of that. Like the tyrants are good, and these challenges that might happen in your life, if we look at them as if they shouldn't have happened, you know, then we've limited them. But when we see them that they're absolutely they're happening for you, not to you, then this incredible, all this, everything that's playing out is actually just, you know, a celebration of life and an expression of what's possible.
And that's really kind of where I came to understand that nothing is innately completely bad, because everything that's happened in my life, there is always a silver thread. It might have been
Yeah.
the most horrible thing I ever went through and never want to do it again. So much bad came from it, but this one
Mm.
good thing happened. And, or, because of that, this other good thing happened down the road. If that, all that didn't happen, this never would have happened. And if you adopt that philosophy that there's always like just maybe even just a little tiny thread of good in it,
Yeah.
then you'll
Mhm.
always see it down the road. Why? Because there is something good that because it's always good. It's always for your betterment. All the hard stuff, it's to make you stronger and make you better. And
Mm.
I mean, it's the catalyst for your
Mm.
growth. You don't grow by never experiencing hard things. Like the
Yeah.
people who is more inspiring to you, somebody who's been to the bottom and like been at the bottom of all the different depths, drug addiction, was fat, but they turned their life around. Or, you know, is that more inspiring to you
Yeah.
than the monk who spent his whole life in a monastery? I
Yeah.
mean, that's impressive, but the person who's been through so much and turned their life around and is now inspiring people, that's more inspiring to me. So the
Totally.
catalyst is
Mm.
there for a reason. Without it, you don't want to
Yeah.
grow. You're comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is the biggest trap.
Yeah.
Um, I have a lot of clients who really have really difficult stories. And I just, it's just like, you know, like they're climbing cliffs like without ropes, and the rest of the world's like on escalators, and they're comparing themselves to these people who are just getting a free pass, and they're judging themselves and beating themselves up for not being like these other people. But their conditions in which they were handed, the contract in which they were given, was really difficult for a reason, because they're that powerful. And that's going to humble them enough so that when they do step into their power, they will have been gone through something so significant to have really understand, you know, how they got there, and that then they'll be able to teach other people because they actually did it.
Yeah.
um or I have
And
a friend who was,
they're humble enough to talk to those people that are still at the bottom
yeah,
because
they
they've
would
been there.
never, you know. Yeah. Yeah. and and so we're just going to see more and more of this, is like the unauthentic people who have been upholding an image of themselves and convince others that they're powerful, those people are going to get exposed. And all the really authentic people are going to, authenticity is going to be the strongest currency moving forward. People that have been manipulating and controlling things are going to find that those systems don't work the way they used to. And people that have been really in their genuine heart path are going to start being supported more, because of the shift that's occurring. And so we're in really exciting times across the board. There is divine intervention. There are miracles that will be expressed through the infinite potential of our collective perception, right? So um, it's exciting to be here in these days and be talking with people like yourself and just being
I know
open
we're
to what's
lucky to be
coming.
here at this time, I think, you know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think
No,
everybody
it's
feels
so
that way, but once you're awake to it, you're like, no, this is awesome. How lucky are
lit.
we?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially getting kicked out kind of the groups I was in by them going along with the bullshit. It really made me excited on a new level because there was like a hypnosis I was in within that, and by seeing that those people are not able to look at certain things. It's kind of like that crouching tiger, hidden dragon, where she realizes she's gone past her teacher, but she doesn't want her teacher to know that because she's comfortable in the position she's in. It's terrifying to no longer be under the wing of the person you've been, getting shade or protection from. But what a necessary thing to happen. All these catalysts, we're all getting kicked out of the nest so we can learn how to fly, and the abstract flight is a real thing. What Taisha achieved by spending all those years recapitulating and merging with the tree and then learning how to do dreaming, she was able to, and it's really well explained in the Sorcerer's Crossing what the abstract flight is. And, so there's so much to be excited about outside of just what's happening, but the inner landscape of
Yeah,
what's possible as the wave lifts.
it really is. That's the fun to explore yourself and all the things that you yourself are capable of.
Hmm.
It's the best part.
Yeah, like Don Juan said, this world is just a feeling. We've interpreted it as something else, but it's pure feeling. And when you become aware of the feelings and how many feelings have moved through your being, and you recapitulate all the feelings, then all these brand new feelings that you had no idea even existed start to become accessible. And then you move beyond the thoughts into pure presence, pure intent, and then you can witness, energy as you travel through the cosmos or through the inner abyss, right? um so it's doesn't Abbie and I are both proof that you don't have to go about it in the way that, you don't have to copy Carlos, you don't have to try to be like somebody else. The real power lies in you discovering your own authentic way in which you want to be, and then getting excited, allowing your passion for what interests you to activate you, to allow that to stir up and kind of get you to know what it is energetically that you're you're desiring, and it will lead to the desire to be very lucid. And lucidity just means, clairvoyance, consciousness, being alert, feeling, seeing, sensing. When we start to smell more and use our ears more and take the pressure off the eyes, then the eyes get to see energy because you're more in the auditory and you're more in the smelling and you're more in the feeling side of it. And for Toltecs, they say we can move beyond the five senses, and that's where everything changes. Is when you start to move into because in order to move beyond the five senses, you move into one place that then gains access to these other places, which they didn't give words to. But when you develop your will, you're no longer you're now in the realm of power. You're able to do things in dreaming. For me, the gate of power, being able to run in the darkness, in the wilderness, in treacherous terrain, in the pitch black, and my energy body knowing exactly where and what to do, liberated me and helped me understand, that there is this incredible power and guidance that's available to tap into. and that was enough just to get me hooked, right? It was just a moment of pure magic and being held by the void, by the mother, as as I should have been, just physically hurt, injured easily. I was just untouched. There's nothing could happen because I surrendered. And there's different versions of that type of acquiescence to the void, to the darkness, to the silence. And so it's not something to force. This is more of a thing to fall in love with your existence. And then you'll have the energy and attention to really get honest about what you want. And what Don Juan would do is have Carlos read him poems that would jolt him. We want to jolt ourselves. We want to remind ourselves how precious our existence is. Um, and that's why I don't like the idea of reincarnation, is that we get another shot at this. I like to think of this as, this is it. This is my opportunity here in order to do something really unique. I'm not saying that I won't continue in other ways, but this is not something I want to take for granted. So any type of lucidity engagement or any types of new feelings that can come into your life can be significant sort of thread in which you can pull on, and it will lead to all kinds of doors opening.
And that's really why you need to remember that death is right there
Mm,
over your left shoulder. Because if you
totally,
don't remember that, then you're not going to live your best life. You're not going to make this one count,
totally. Oh,
because you whether you know that you're mortal or not, you still sort of feel like you're infinite until you remember that death's right there. It's ready to tap you on the shoulder at any time.
yes, yeah, so beautiful. It's a key piece, is having bringing in death as an advisor, and we take ourselves so seriously, and we get all caught up in things that are happening, but they're very meaningless in comparison to our death. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, bringing in that consciousness of our impermanence. The Toltecs say we behave as if we're immortal. And if we could start behaving like, they say the difference between them and others is that they are beings who are going to die. Because they're conscious of that statement, that makes them very, they don't really waste any seconds or moments. They're very careful with what they do with their time. And when you discover dreaming like Abbie has, um, it really changes things. You can really gain experience and joy, and build your attention by exploring what's possible in the nonlinear, and you move into more of the abstract, which is where the real magic happens, and where abstract conversations and ideas and feelings move our perception, right? So my teachers were word singers. They could move my assemblage point because their assemblage point was moved as they were speaking. It would move mine. And as more and more of us learn to move our perception, we will be impacted by each other's shifts, and we'll become more aware of our death, because we'll become more alert. And then when we learn to work in groups without them being corrupted, and that's the trick, is the pendulum, like how to be in the world and watch the drama attempt to infiltrate, and then how to like be conscious enough to sort of not not need it to be any different, but learn how to transition, because it's going to happen. So we're going to get to be really creative as we become friends with more people and have more, people reaching out and asking questions. It's just the way of the world. And I was really into privacy and thought that that was the way to go. But now I'm really thankful that I got kicked out of that. I've met so many incredible people, and been able to, I'm doing a workshop here in person now, and we're going to start doing the movements together in groups. And so it's really exciting times. And but I really appreciate your curiosity in this stuff, and that you've explored it so much. I'm so glad we ran into each other on Twitter, and
Me too.
um yeah, it's been
Because
so cool.
even in the realms that I fly in, these other witches and stuff, they don't necessarily come at it from the same angle as I do. So it's so nice when I meet somebody else who appreciates the same things that I do and has a very similar paradigm.
Cool. Oh, awesome. Yeah, it means a lot. And it is a small world. There's not a lot of people like you and I, and so we're lucky to have run into each other at the time that we did. It's cool that Summer is the way that we met. She's a really amazing person, and really glad you guys are friends. And
Me too.
yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna be August 31st, September 1st. There'll be a 2-day workshop here, and there'll be an additional day. My wife and I will be teaching some martial arts stuff that's more energetic and Aikido style flow stuff that moves into some of the dreaming movements. And then I'm going to do a 2-day tour, take people into the mountains, smaller group. And we'll be doing the magical passes that we learned over the weekend in the mountains and just seeing how the wind and different elements are affected by being out there. So if anybody's interested, feel free to reach out. There's still room. Um, and yeah, I look forward to meeting you in person someday. Hopefully, we can connect and do some magical passes together.
I would love to. That'd be awesome. I did want to ask you this
Cool.
really quick. Did you ever watch the movie with Corey Haim and Corey Feldman called Dream a Little Dream?
Yes.
They're doing
Love
he's the dreaming professor, now that I watch as an adult, I'm like, he was doing magical passes. So it's kind of
it.
interesting.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Such a such a good movie. Even though it's Hollywood and those actors
Yeah,
were MK Ultra and stuff, it's really, really good movie, and it explains re really there's a beautiful side to what um these movements do, and they can bring in such pure silence, and especially a couple that love each other, like that old man and woman, and the way that they were doing and what was happening to them in that movie was so sweet. And then for
it
the two
was.
kids to get involved and all that happen and cross over, um, these things are real. It may sound like a fictional concept when you watch the movie that can't happen, but it's amazing what can happen when we come out of what the limitation we think it is. So um, yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. My wife and I are actually, it's one of our favorite movies. It has a big part of our life and in a lot of ways. So, um,
Mine
thank you,
too.
Abbie. I
So
really appreciate your time. Yeah, cool.
thank you for having me on.
Um, yeah, I look forward to putting this out. I'll put this out tonight and I'll send you the link. And yeah, much love, everybody. If you have any questions about the Castaneda material, feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk to Abbie sometime. And she has a podcast called The Secret Society of Good Guys. And they have a website and a YouTube channel, and they're really funny. And it's a really cool thing to check out. So I encourage you to go over there and yeah, hear things from a different perspective with lots of humor. And it's a really energizing experience to be in part of. So I'm glad you guys are continuing with that.
Well, thank
So
you. I'm glad that
much love to you.
thank you for the very positive words there. That was very sweet of you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you got, yeah, really, it's good energy, and we need more people sharing. So hopefully we'll do this again. Maybe we can get Summer to come on one of these times. The three of us could have a
That'd be
talk. That
awesome.
would be cool. So and let's do some talks on X, some spaces in the future. We'll get connected with Summer again and do more of that. I might start recording some of those and putting them out for other people to hear through YouTube and stuff too, because some of the talks in there are just incredible. So,
They
all
are. I
right.
just hope they lean a little less towards the drinking of bodily fluids.
Oh
It's not my
God, yeah,
favorite
all the
subject.
totally, yeah. It's such a thing now. Everybody's into.
I've
Yeah, I'm watching so many vegans and pee drinkers, and they're so sick and dying, but they're like trying to convince everybody that it's like
it's
the only
healing.
way to be, and it
And I'm
doesn't make
going,
healthy.
you fermented your pee and you're drinking that. So it's just straight ammonia. I don't think those are
Mm.
cleansing
It-
symptoms. I think you're poisoning yourself. But I shouldn't be talking about Shivambu on here. So
No, it's all good. We're very strange creatures, and we, like Don once said at the end of the active side of infinity, that everybody's looking for something that isn't actually going to work because they're actually addicted to their suffering. They're always
yeah,
going to come up with some secret thing that's going to fix them. But the work that is needed is not something outside of you. It's not the pee, it's not the food, it's your unbending intent. And if you don't have unbending intent, then something is bending your intent, right? And you're being used, right? So our path to freedom is through unbending intent, and it's an uncomfortable thing to develop. But once you understand what it is, the longing for it to get stronger, it becomes more important than anything else. And then you start to realize that this whole thing's a distraction, and that there is a very specific purpose that we're being um, kept from through hypnosis. And so layers and layers of hypnosis we will break through on our way to learning more about what's possible, and move toward the path of freedom. So yeah, I can't wait to talk again. We didn't cover a lot of things, but I'm glad we covered what we
I
did.
know.
And
I'm like, my brain's already gone so many more places, so it'll be fun
yeah,
to chat next
let's keep
time.
cool. Yeah, we'll keep it going, and we'll do it soon. So much love to you, Abbie. Really appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate everybody watching. See you next time.
Good night.
And stop.